Welcome to episode 53 of Uncaged Sports Talk. The 1 year anniversary. This is the 1 year anniversary of Uncaged Sports Talk. The first episode I released was August 3rd last year. So 1 year of Uncaged Sports Talk. Gonna be a fun episode. Gonna just go around the sports landscape as we enter August. This is actually, I mentioned it last week before I bring in my guest for this week. This is actually technically my new profession I'm in. I'm technically a official pro sports media member, I would say. But I'm gonna bring in my guest for this episode, Dan Steenkamer. How have you been? It's nice to have you back on the episode, back on the
Hey,
show.
yeah, Luke, great to see you. And first things that's in order is just to congratulate you on 1 year of the program.
Thank you.
It's been my pleasure to see it really just be a grind and for you to be committed to it and take off. And
It's
glad to have been a bit of a little role in it from the beginning. And now just to see you getting ready for the next step that you're just alluding to, that's pretty awesome. So, yeah, just happy to be back with you, my guy. And looking forward to seeing what you're doing this fall. But great to be here and looking forward to talking some sports.
Thank you. I've the views haven't really been coming for this, but I got to get back on the marketing side of doing like handing out business cards. But I've been telling people this is almost like just a resume builder, experience builder, because it keeps me getting experience. The more I do it, the better I'll get over time. It keeps my foot in the door too.
Right.
Who knows? May have helped me get this new job that I just got in
Yeah.
Baltimore. I mentioned it last week. I got it for people that didn't watch last week. I got a job. I accepted in Baltimore for 105.7 A Fan. I start next Wednesday. I'll be running a board and producing during University of Maryland sporting events. They like broadcast those live, and they said within 5 months I might be able to get a crack on air. We'll see with all that how all that shakes out. But this just got to keep plugging away at this. It's just a resume builder. The more experience I get, the better my resume looks.
There's no doubt about it. And look, it's about being committed. Like I use
Yeah,
committed. It's just you're not seeing crazy returns necessarily because it's just something that you're completely self-promoting and
yeah,
getting
it's
out
like a
there and
hobby.
dispersing and distributing. So, but being able to persist and not
Yeah,
have to have the immediate payoff, I think people who are hiring see that.
yeah,
So that's my advice. Like that,
yeah.
you're ahead of me on that. Like you're in
It's
the
like a
grind.
hobby. Keeps my foot in the door. The worst thing you can do, from what I saw, you're doing like the writing stuff currently. That's like the avenue you're going through most. I've noticed is the worst thing you can do is just take your foot out of the door. Sports media. Like I had the career job, but and kept doing this. The worst if I did not do this, who knows if I would have got that job in Baltimore. The worst thing you can potentially do is take your foot out of the door. Because then the door might close and never open again.
It's a competitive landscape to use that kind of couple of buzzwords. And once people get positions,
Yeah.
they don't want to let go, right? And who
Yeah.
would? So yeah, so you're on point, man, for sure.
So enough about me. How has your summer been?
It's flying by. I want to keep my I guess talking about myself pretty brief as well because you mentioned it, and I'll get more into getting back in the routine of fall sports writing with football season and University of Delaware football preseason camp just starting here this week for fall practices and Delaware getting ready to play that final season in the FCS before moving up to the
That's
FBS in
exciting.
2025. So there's a lot that's on my mind with that and getting ready for that, both in covering it a few different places in written format, and then also going to help broadcast Delaware football one more time, one more season on WVUD, which is, of course, where you and I
Yeah.
changed paths at UD. So all in all, just you kind of know it's that time of year for me, and it's very much an optimistic time of year, just knowing that everybody's 0-0 when it comes to college football. Always love following that and seeing where it goes. But baseball home stretch, too. I mean, trade deadline we're about to get into,
It,
man, and
a,
discussing
a
that.
lot
It's just a fun time getting into August.
a lot of stuff is just mixing together. College football is coming up. There is football today when this episode releases. So there's finally football back. We made it. There's the Olympics are going on. You got like hockey's training camp starting soon. The Flyers brought over Mitch Call. Mention that later. The Sixers had their off season Embiid's playing in the Olympics. It somewhat ties together. There's a bunch of stuff tying together right now. No sports really being played except for baseball and the Olympics. And football somewhat coming back. But everything's somewhat tying together right now. It's a bunch of just preparing for like September. Because September is when stuff really ramps up. When there's a month until baseball season, when your college football season starts. You got hockey truly enters training camp. Basketball, I think, starts their training camp late September. Just a bunch of stuff. Football, both football begins college and NFL. So it starts to ramp up in September. This is just like that. You can see it coming. The plane is starting its descent. The plane that's in the air is just starting its descent.
And we got a taste of October just last night with that Yankees-Phillies finish. I mean, as we record at this current time in the midst of the Yankees-Phillies series in Philadelphia.
They'll be playing.
It didn't go Philadelphia's way most recently in game 2 of that series, but still just the way that went to extra innings and just being in Baltimore, actually being with the Orioles fans that night and seeing that they were locked in on that game because, of course, you got the interest in the AL East ramifications. For the Yankees purposes and being close to the Orioles in the standings, it was very much an intense situation, but in the most positive way, just feeling like you got those high stakes of getting closer to October, even when it's just August.
Since we're on the topic of baseball, for the Phillies, is there any panic for you? I personally don't have any. I'll say why, but
I think panic, is a strong word. I would say you like what the Phillies did at the deadline by and large. Because there's a closer in place, right? A really designated closer, which is big time for when the postseason does roll around. You like where the Phillies still stand in terms of the division. I think you're starting to feel things even out in terms of the law of averages saying there's going to be that colder streak after there was a really hot stretch as we got into those warmer months where the Phillies built that bigger lead by the time the All-Star break came around. Law of averages says there's going to be a little bit of regression from that. I do have a concern as far as not the rotation itself and not with Zach Wheeler in a vacuum. Wheeler is obviously the clear number one, is going to be starting game 1 of however many postseason series. But I think to just looking at Wheeler's showings against the most difficult lineups he's faced this year, obviously the most challenging orders you're facing, they're going to be lesser results because it's just tougher competition. But thinking about having to face the AL's Orioles and the AL's Yankees and how that's gone for the Phillies, even with a player like Wheeler on the mound to start anyway, not saying it's Wheeler's fault exclusively, because of course the Yankees were able to tee off the other night at CDP as well against a variety of pitchers. But I think about those things. I think about just there needs to be a certain level that is achieved against the highest level of competition to get more optimism before going into another stretch run in the fall.
The thing that doesn't give me panic is it's July. Like, if this was happening in September or even mid-August, I would feel like it would almost remind me of the Eagles. But we're only around like I've been keeping track of. I'll probably mention it next episode. I'll do it. But I've been keeping track of like what a team's record would be if it was an NFL schedule. So every 10 games, it's included. 6 or more wins is 1 win. 4 or less wins is a loss, and 5-5 is a tie. And we're only about at week 10. So if this continues for another week or so, then I start to hit the panic button if this continues in the mid-August. But it's July. Like, you got 60 games still to figure it out. Teams go through hot and cold stretches. The Phillies are still tied for first place. It, like you said, the Wheeler stuff is concerning. And against 2 of the best teams he's faced, he's gotten blitzed early. That's maybe the good teams have something on them where if you get to him early, he gets maybe rattled. Because against the Orioles, he gave up a home run to start the game. He gave up runs early. Against the Yankees on Monday night, he gave up runs early. And then both turned into blowout games. That's one of the concerns with him. Ranger Suarez isn't what he was doing, but did anyone expect him to do that through the entire year?
Well, right. And
Yeah,
now you think about Ranger too being on the shelf
regression.
at the moment.
Yeah,
Just look at the Phillies back end of the rotation, especially when you're missing that. Not Ranger is better than a middle starter, but if he lines up as a number 3, I guess he could be 2 in front of Nola as well at this point. But you just think about how that actually shortens the rotation a little
mhm.
more. We already had question marks about the number 5 range in the Phillies starting rotation, so that's something
W-
that's on the mind too. But I was just looking at the schedule for the Phillies throughout the rest of the second half, and right after this Yankees series, you're getting a big road swing out west to the Mariners, which are a contending team. The Dodgers and the D-backs are back-to-back series for the Phils. You come back east and things ease up a little bit with the Fish and the Nats, but even after that, you get closer to September and you're playing the
The
Royals and the
Braves.
Astros and the Braves
Yeah,
all in succession in terms of series that take you into September. And then in September, there's a big time stretch of games where you're playing primarily the Mets. And then the Brewers are in the middle of that too. And the Brewers are going to win a division. So
they gotta just tread water, I think, in this road trip out west.
I, I, I'm very curious to see how the Mets look by the time that September spurt of Mets Phillies games comes around. Because if the Mets can just keep closing the gap, I'm not saying the Mets are going to take the division or overtake the division necessarily, but so I'm not trying to sound an alarm in that respect.
Mhm.
But that run of games in September, one of those classic, late season division matchups. You get a home series in mid-September, and then very soon after an away series at Citi Field. That's going to be just intriguing because the Mets made a couple moves to shore themselves up. Paul Blackburn as a pitcher, and you go down the list. They also added Jesse Winker in their outfield, so I just think the Mets are worth paying attention to, considering they're right there with the Braves too, and the Braves are touch and go with their health, obviously.
So, going through this over this next stretch to mid August, before you get that easy homestand before the Braves series, this road trip out west, you need 4 wins. You need to tread water. 4 and 6, I'll accept. It's only 2 games under 500. Just tread water. If you get 5, that's a W. That's like a huge win if you can get 5 on this road trip. That would be at least winning one of these series. And don't get swept tonight against the Yankees. You haven't been swept all year. Probably the only team in baseball that hasn't been swept, I would think. But just don't get swept in this series and then tread water out west. And then you come home, take care of business against those teams, and that can help you get back in a groove. Because baseball is a game of ups and downs, ups and downs. When it's going bad, it goes bad. Like it's bad for a lot of teams when it goes bad.
Right, and it can be contagious. I mean, we've
Then
seen
when it
these
goes good,
things. Yep.
that's just everyone's hits. It feels like
Yeah.
when it's going good.
Right.
Yankees were just in their bad stretch. Now it seems like it's starting to go good. They got good vibes now that Jazz Chisholm came in, the beginning of the Jazz Chisholm stuff. While we're on the topic of like Jazz Chisholm, I want to ask you your favorite trade deadline move. Anything that stands out to you?
Well, it was intriguing, and we talked about this before the show, just how much the Phillies and Orioles are able to partner up on moves, and it's
A lot
interesting
of
because
moves.
I follow both teams. So for me, it's just kind of it's been a pretty routine experience now to be following the same players just in different settings. So that's
Yeah.
kind of funny. But beyond that, Austin Hayes is a cool addition for the Phillies. Of
Makes
course,
the lineup look a little deeper.
he just had some success at the plate here so far in this Phillies Yankees series, but the Phillies needed that additional corner outfield help, and even Hayes can slide to center as well if
Yeah.
it's really a pinch. I would think. I mean, not as much as he was probably going to do so earlier in a career, but that's one that definitely sticks out. And on the Orioles end, Seranthony Dominguez has been good for them so far. He's
Mm-hmm.
shown the hard slider and the hard obviously the fastball velocity is there, and the Orioles needed to shore up the back end of the bullpen. Even if Dominguez doesn't become the full-time closer, there's just not a lot of depth there for the O's. So that made sense. When I look across the sport, you and I were saying it wasn't necessarily the biggest blockbuster of a Robert or a Crochet coming out of the White Sox, but the White Sox were very busy. But I was interested to see what the Cardinals did, the Mets did. Those teams kind of in the middle of the National League looking to fortify themselves. I was watching the Pirates closely as well because the Pirates really aren't out of it by any stretch. They're
Mm-hmm.
more viable than they've been this late in a year. So those are things I was looking for in the NL, but I think you can't overlook the Dodgers either. The Dodgers made a flurry of moves and maybe East
Yeah,
Coast
Jack
bias.
Flaherty.
Yeah, East Coast bias. I personally wasn't even as locked into what the Dodgers were up to, but because there were distractions of the Yankees getting Chisholm and all in this, that, and the other thing, and I almost wasn't as dialed into what the Dodgers were doing. But when you step back and look what the Dodgers did, they added a couple of different utility pieces that could really help with their flexibility. The Dodgers have a lot of different injuries they've been working through, so it's kind of interesting the parallels, the Phillies and the Dodgers, just in terms of both have been through injuries, and you've probably seen the Phillies be able to manage better with what they have already in house, and now the Dodgers shoring things up with some what's the word for it? It's escaping me right now. I can't believe I'm blanking right now. The I truly am blanking on the word for
With
it.
some depth, maybe.
What's that?
With some depth, they've like a
Well,
lot.
yeah, but
I've
it's
noticed that a lot of teams are adding like
there's a
depth.
word for it. I'm not fighting. People are gonna clown me probably for this, but yeah, it's reinforcements. That's what it
Yeah.
was. Reinforcements. Wow, you can tell it's
No, I see.
probably
What,
it's early
yeah,
in the
sure,
morning for
think,
me.
yeah,
Jeez. But anyhow, yeah, reinforcements for the Dodgers. And that's interesting because in the end, the Dodgers, if the Braves are truly so banged up that they're not going to wind up even making a wild card, possibly, let's say the Braves do, and they're going to be a pain in that case. But the Phillies and Dodgers are easy to envision. The Padres aren't going to go quietly away from the Dodgers either. So it's interesting how the West and the East probably have these thought of as powerhouses, and then the Central is kind of lurking. The Brewers have a pretty good handle on things there in that division, but the Cardinals and the Pirates are a cool kind of trend to follow as well because they're not shabby by any means. So the NL is interesting, whereas the AL is also worth intrigue for different reasons. The Guardians, the Orioles, the Yankees, and the TBD Astros, somebody out west.
yeah.
It's a
Astros
little more
Mariners.
clearly defined. I think the most powerful in the AL.
Yeah, I was just going through the standings before I give my thought on like the trade deadline. I didn't even notice yet that the Braves are only a half or a game up on a division or wild card spot. They could drop out of the playoffs completely if the Diamondbacks, Mets, and Padres come on strong. And they've been 3-7 in their last 10, while the Mets, Padres, and Diamondbacks 7-3, 8-2, 7-3. If those teams come on strong and the Braves falter down the stretch, they could lose out on a playoff spot. And who would have thought the Braves not making a playoffs before the year started, especially with 7 potential playoff teams? There's 7 playoff teams. I know it's 6. I don't know why I'm saying 7. I'm used to the NFL style. But with 6 playoff teams and the Braves might miss, who would have thought that before the year?
The Braves, they're in a very unenviable position. Max Fried, injured list.
Yeah.
Ozzie Albies, injured list. Michael Harris, injured list. We know about Acuna, right? Like,
Acuna,
now again, I'm not trying
Strider.
to make an excess of excuses, but even
Just
like
banged
Reynaldo
up.
Lopez is day to day, listed as day to day at the moment.
They've been getting just ravaged by injuries this year. Once Acuna and Strider went down, it was just like, yeah, this something's not right there this year. They're just getting ravaged by injuries. It felt almost cheap because at that point they likely aren't going to compete for this division. If the Phillies lose this division, it would be historic collapse, like historic.
Yeah, but it's happened. Things have happened like that though.
You would have to play under 500 baseball the rest of this year.
The Mets are 8 games back of the Phillies as we sit here today, recording today, and that's before the conclusion of this Phillies-Yankees series. The Mets have won 7 of 10, if I'm reading that correctly. Yep, 7-3 in their last 10, the New York Mets. Phillies losing 7 of the last 10. So that's a big swing. And a couple more swings that way before we get to September, where you have the head-to-head Phillies-Mets, and maybe that September series of games, or pair of series, I should say, maybe that has the division in the balance a little bit. So I can't rule that out right now.
I'm trying to see the biggest modern collapses. That's 2011. I'm trying to look up the biggest modern collapses in baseball history, division-wise. This is 2011, and it says 1964. 1964 was a completely different style of baseball. There was only there was only a pennant. There was no divisions. 1934. All right. 10 biggest pennant race collapses. Let's see what the most modern one is. 2009, on September 6th, the Tigers led Okay, so 8 games at this point. It's not out of the realm of possibilities. The Tigers led in 2009 by 7 games.
Yeah, I mean, if it's single digits,
Yeah.
we have months to go, and that's
Red
months plural.
Red
So
Sox 78, that's a different style back then. The Braves had a 7.5 game lead over the Phillies in 2011. Oh no, they were sitting 7.5 back of the Phillies. Wait, what's this say? Entering the final month, the Braves' chances of locking up the NL East were slim. Atlanta was sitting 7.5 games back of the Phillies. Owners are the best. They did hold a sizable advantage. Oh, they had 7.5 above St. Louis for the wild card spot in 2011 and choked it. So about 7 looks to be the number for like modern baseball ones. Anything more than 7, it seems like 7.5 would be like never been done before. 7.5 seems to be that number for collapses. If it's just within 7.5 in the last month, which it is within 7.5 right now,
right.
then it's worrisome. If it's above that, you just about should be good because I don't think I haven't seen one that said 8 yet. Boston held a 9-game lead over the Rays in September. Okay, you need it. Yeah, if it's single digits, it's possible, but it's only been over 7.5 once. It seems like in modern baseball history. But I'm not hitting a panic button yet. Just tread water this trip out west, and then come back and handle business against the Fish and the Nationals. With the trade deadline, it just seems like it was just a bunch of like depth pieces. Like a lot of teams went for depth pieces, and Dave Dombrowski even pointed out basically it was a seller's market this year. There wasn't many sellers, so the demand heavily outweighed the supply.
Right. So
Of pieces.
prices are high. There we
The
go.
prices were too much to go get a true star. So people went and just added depth. Like the Austin Hayes adds depth to the Phillies lineup. The relievers of Phillies got Carlos Estevez, great against lefties. Against lefties are hitting like 200 against them, 184 or something. Estevez was great against lefties. Tanner Scott was the other guy. I'm thinking of Tanner Banks. They got Tanner Banks was the one who was great against lefties, 184 against lefties. Like lefties have a 184 batting average against him. But Carlos Estevez, 20 out of 23 saves. I brought him up on Sunday. Phillies made some good bullpen moves. They shored up the bullpen. They traded Soto and Sir Anthony to your Orioles. We also forgot to mention someone else that your Orioles have. The Orioles have a bunch of players that the Phillies had over the last 2 years. Zach Eflin, Craig Kimbrell, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Gregory Soto, Christian Pache.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy to think about.
That's 20% of the roster? Am I doing my math right?
Well, I don't know. Is it that? But
there's 26 men on a roster. 5 divided by 26. Yeah, 19% of the Orioles roster.
It's more than I would have thought. Who would have thunk it, right?
Phillies players.
I'm glad you mentioned Eflin because Eflin isn't just. Yeah, there were a lot of things that were with depth in mind, but Eflin is going to start the 3rd game of a postseason series for Baltimore.
Yeah,
the Orioles had starting needs. Kyle Bradish is hurt. John Means injured list. Tyler Wells, same deal. So you have Corbin Burns, Grayson Rodriguez, and then boom, Eflin in there. Yeah. That way you don't have the same kind of pressure on Dean Kramer and Albert Suarez, which is a good deal for Baltimore. And there was also the Orioles move to acquire Trevor Rogers from the Marlins, although the O's did have to give up Connor Norby in that exchange, as well as Kyle Stowers. And that's one of those tough prices to pay. But if Rogers pays dividends in the form of innings in this run, then it'll be considered well worth it. And also corresponding with shipping Norby out, the Orioles bringing up Jackson Holiday now as well, once again, back to the big leagues. So that's something where it kind of you can see all these kind of pieces trying to fit together, but the O's, it depends on how you spin it. Like it might look conservative on the surface because there wasn't a huge trade of Holiday for Skubal or something like that. Like you didn't see that kind of move, but there were needs that were addressed and a lot of them were pitching. So
And like we were saying, almost no like Scoobles got traded. Almost no one like that got traded. Maybe Jack Flaherty is one of the biggest ones. Jazz
maybe somebody
Chisholm.
takes off after the deadline. Maybe somebody takes off, and we view it that way. We view it as a big time blockbuster only after the fact, right? Like
Mhm.
we didn't have the ones where the people's resume to begin with made it a blockbuster.
And
Maybe they build that after they're joining their new
I
team.
know Zeta Flynn trade could almost be like, I don't know if it's a great comparison. I was young back then, but maybe it's the Orioles Joe Blanton.
Mm.
The Phillies traded for Joe Blanton in 2008 at the deadline, and he paid dividends in the 2008 World Series run. The Orioles also have a lot of parallels to that younger Phillies team. Phillies were young back then, and they got in 1 year, got bounced round one. I think I remember saying this last October when they did get bounced. There's just a lot of parallels. Now, the second year in the playoffs, potentially, they got the playoff experience under their belt. There's some parallels for the Orioles and the Phillies. Gonna be interesting down the stretch with baseball. Gonna touch on a few other topics before as we start to try to round out this episode. I want to ask your thoughts as we head into the football season. Any things that stand out? Anything you're interested in as we head towards the football season? Last week I did my top 5 storylines I'm interested in. Is there a number one storyline you're interested in following?
Number one, I mean, just to choose number one, I think you just think about what's popular on all the talk shows, what's trending in what direction. The Chargers out west with Jim Harbaugh are very trendy. So that's something where, okay, you're looking at Justin Herbert and that team, and there's been so much talk in previous seasons about coaching there in recent history. So Jim Harbaugh, that is, should stabilize the Chargers to the point where they should be right there, viably chasing the Chiefs, right? Just like everybody does. But I think local to us, the Eagles are an interesting case study because last season, of course, did not end how anybody would have liked in this region, unless you're an Eagles hater, I guess. So just looking at what's the reset like? What is the kind of clean slate that is the
That was
vibe
my
of how
number
this
one.
season starts? Because there was so much of the thought process, even boiling down to the locker room, right? Like, what
Yeah.
was Nick Sirianni's locker room situation? Was Sirianni going to remain in charge? And yes, he did. And so now here we are, Jalen Hurts looking to I don't want to say re-solidify himself, but just the Eagles have been really well run and well managed, and the personnel is good. The personnel is good, and you
Yeah.
also look at the Eagles, and there are players who are signed, and there aren't a lot of big like contract question marks necessarily. The way we're talking about the Cowboys ad nauseum
You
with
sound like
Prescott
me
and
last
CeeDee
week.
Lamb, right? Like, right, deals are done, right, for
Yeah.
Philadelphia. So it's very much interesting to me because you take a peek at how the early season schedule starts for the Eagles, and in 2 of your first 4 games, you've got Green Bay, which is of course the special Peacock game, and you have a road game at the Bucks, and going back to Tampa Bay, right? So that it's just a kind of interesting start for Philly, and I know you have a lot more on it, but I think that's something that I have to keep my eye on it. In addition to the Chargers in the AFC,
You,
is the Eagles in the NFC, because the Eagles should be a Super Bowl threat.
yeah, that's almost everything you just said there is kind of like a summary of what I said last week for my number one thing. My
Mhm.
number one thing was, can the Eagles bounce back or will they like continue to falter? The Packers game that you just brought up too, I brought that up last week. I
Mhm.
was like, if they lose that game, there's 9 days before the next game.
Mm. Yeah.
There's going to be a huge and it depends on how they lose. But let's just say a normal loss. Like they just get beat. There's going to be a huge black cloud over them heading into the following week. And it can start to spiral if you let it, which is what I'm worried about. If they win, it could also be a jump start to a season. It could be like, okay, we got the monkey off our back now. Let's go play some football.
Mm.
It can Momentum is a big thing in sports. Like, I don't think like coaches in sports don't use momentum enough. Like with Dan Campbell's a perfect example. He did not use momentum enough in the playoff or that regular season Cowboys Lions game. He continued to try to go for it. at a certain point, you use the momentum and you just take the field goal. You don't momentum starting to trend towards the other team. Momentum is just a big thing in sports, is my point there.
Oh, for sure.
So if you lose that game, it could spiral. You got a week 5 bye. If it spirals, I brought it up last week. There could be a firing. If you go 1-3 to start the season, 0-4 maybe. That's just
spiral. Oh, well, come on. Okay,
worst case scenario. I'm
saying worst case scenario. Winless to start the season. Okay, I'm not an Eagles fan, and I'm promising you they're not going to go winless to start the year.
1-3 is possible though. In that,
well,
Eagles,
you don't think they're going to sweep the Falcons and Saints?
The Saints is on the road in New Orleans. You got the Superdome.
Early in the year, though, I mean, I don't think it's as intense as a late season crowd, honestly.
The Falcons got some new additions: Kirk Cousins, Drake London, Bijan, Jesse Bates on defense. They got some pieces. They're not cupcakes like they were last year.
Yeah, I guess you could accuse me of basing too much off of those, previous recency bias. So
it could spiral. I don't think 0-4, but 1-3. You're 1-3 heading into that bye. There's going to be talks in that front office, maybe making a change, because the bye week's a perfect bye week the bye week's a perfect time to make a change if you're going to. If you win that, if you win that Packers game, all those questions go out the window. You got, like I said, you get a monkey off your back, and you feel almost relieved heading into that Falcons game at home opener. Your fans are excited. Your players probably play loose in the annual Kirk Cousins Week 2 game.
Yeah, that is. What is it with Cousins in prime time at the Link?
In week 2.
Yeah,
the last 3 years.
Monday Night Football, ESPN, Falcons, Eagles. Now the Falcons are one. I didn't mention that story, but of course you've got the Penix storyline with the Falcons. Bo Nix with the Broncos. Interesting. Sean Payton still with the Broncos.
That draft was crazy.
Tua Tagovailoa's deal. Jordan Love, the deal.
While you bringing up deals, I want to quiz you, because I had to do some educating for myself, educate myself a little. I became a little more educated on it. Do you know the difference between cash? I'm going to keep this a little brief. Do you know the difference between cash and salary cap in the NFL? What it means when they say cash?
You need to spell it out for everybody listening.
So, I've heard Elliot Shore-Parks bring up that Jeffrey Lurie is willing to spend cash, for the signing bonuses of players. The Cowboys spend the least cash in the NFL, which is probably why it's making it a little harder to sign these contracts currently. Because you can spend cash towards a signing bonus and then spread that out to make the cap hit less.
Mm-hmm.
And cash is just future years' money towards a signing bonus. If the contract, I'm pretty sure this is how it works. If the contract goes until 2030, a 6-year deal or 5-year deal, if it goes until 2029, they could borrow money from 2030 because they're expecting the cap to go up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you spread that out over the length of the contract. It's essentially borrowing money from future years to spread over the length of the contract. Some owners are more willing to do it because if the cap doesn't go up, you screw yourself, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I've looked into that with the Cowboys thing. They spend the least amount of cash in the entire NFL, which was eye-opening. It was you got to be at least somewhere in the middle. Spending the least, it makes it harder to sign contracts if you're not doing it. Eagles, people wonder how they can sign all these people. It's because they're spending cash, which makes the cap hit less. I know that probably sounded like gibberish to a lot of people, but I tried to explain it the best way I could.
That spelled it out.
Eagles and Browns spend the second most cash in the entire NFL. While the Cowboys are struggling, have less contracts, have less big contracts, and they're still struggling to sign people. Eagles were able to lock up 5 different people this offseason. Wanted to touch on that. With what you said, though, your storyline, that's basically what my main storyline was last year. I brought up the Cowboys contracts, that They're struggling. They have some dysfunction there. Contracts not getting done.
Nothing new.
I brought up on the Jets. Aaron Rodgers Aaron
Yeah.
Rodgers, that's a shit show. Anything that follows Aaron Rodgers.
Mhm.
Hassan Reddick, I brought that up. I brought up that I'll be in Baltimore. I brought up a few stuff. Gonna transition. Ask you your thoughts now on the Sixers off season. What do you think of the Sixers off season so far?
You know that I love the draft because Jared McCain was a target
That
for
was the guy
me.
you wanted.
Yeah, he was the guy I wanted. I'd been pretty clear about that in like different texts and group chats, and it's 3-point shooting, right? It's 3-point shooting. It's a okay. We talk about like personality with Jazz Chisholm and whatever, but like Jared McCain's got a good vibe. Like I love the TikTok stuff. Like I don't think it's a distraction. He's a pro's pro. Even as a rookie, he's going to be just fine. I like because I can already see like the counterpoints to being, oh, well, he's this and that. Like McCain is a hooper. And now it will be interesting to see because I don't know exactly the size of the role that he can expect to have rotating early on, or right away, but it'll be worth watching for sure because you do like the nucleus as it is in the locked in starters. Of course, Embiid goes without saying, and Maxey and Paul George being that addition to kind of create that trio. Caleb Martin at the power forward is a good addition. Don't have of course, Tobias Harris on the books anymore. So you just go into the year looking for Embiid to have maximum sustainability over the course into the postseason. The one fear I have, or one of a couple fears, is I think in this window we look at with the Sixers, the Eastern Conference is now swung back the pendulum toward it. It's not the easier. I mean, the West is really good, really all years. The East has had the lean years between the two. The East has been more lean at times. But the East, of course, it's the Celtics at the heavyweight, and Indiana has a lot of resources, a lot of pieces. I just picked them out of thin air because there are several that are pretty good. Cleveland shouldn't necessarily be overlooked. Milwaukee, we don't even bring up because Milwaukee was a bit down, right? But like Milwaukee has that star power. The Magic are kind of up and coming. Now, a bunch of these teams I mentioned, the Sixers should be favored over.
Yeah,
but I didn't even mention the Knicks. Right. So the Knicks are there. The Knicks have been a huge storyline in this offseason because of the way they've powered up and fortified their roster with the Villanova, just maxing out Villanova players. So I rattle all those Eastern Conference teams off because the Sixers have a lesser postseason track record than most of them.
Yeah,
they just do. And I'm hoping that the new look Sixers, as a Sixers fan, I'm hoping that new look version of the Sixers yields a new result. But we've said that before, right? So a lot of it hinges on Paul George for me because, of course, that's the big signing, right? But also Jared McCain, his energy and his positivity and his youthful spirit could be a big asset. Maxey kind of has that good youthful vibe as well. Max is also a baller and a dog, and he's really coming to his own. As on other teams, he would be their number one. So I don't know. I don't think I've said too many hot takes or anything that people haven't heard already about the Sixers. But as I ramble my thoughts, that's what it comes down to is I'm not even willing to be cautiously optimistic because I've done that whole routine already. So let me just sit back and wake up in probably after the All-Star break and see where things stand. I mean, I'll be paying attention, but
the thing I'm excited, like I think the thing that they need help with a little more, like I think they're one move away from me being like ready to watch them fully. They need some height. They need some height and defense at the forward spots. I was just looking at their depth chart. They're set at guard now with the Reggie Jackson pickup. You got Maxey, Oubre, Eric Gordon, Lowry, McCain, Reggie Jackson. You're set at guard. Your forward positions, though? Caleb Martin, Paul George, rookie council. You need a little more depth there. And a little more might be an understatement. Caleb Martin's going to be your power forward. He's 6'5". You need some height at that power forward spot off the bench. Someone who can come in and get rebounds if need be. A Dembona they could use in a lineup somehow, but who knows? He's a rookie, second round rookie. So you need like one more move. With how the NBA is right now, it's a Celtics number one, obviously. Then just about like every other team is like lumped together. Like, there's a bunch of teams
Yep.
lumped together that you can make a case for second.
Right.
Knicks, Thunder, Mavericks, Sixers. There's a bunch of teams just lumped together.
There is parity. There's
Yeah.
parity. I still think the West has the best of I mean, the
They're
Celtics look like
deeper,
a
yeah.
Western team because they have that level of star power. The West with the Thunder ascending and
Yeah.
Ant ascending with the Timberwolves. I just think the West is more stacked with the stars because, of course,
Yeah.
the Lakers with Bron cannot be ignored either. So the East is still a little more of that mixed bag. But even all these
It's
years of the East being mixed, it hasn't helped the Sixers when you come to being banged up at not having the gas to follow through and overcome that vaunted round that I won't even name. Right. And now the
yeah.
Knicks are a big postseason rival on
It's
top of
it's a
Pacers,
little
etc.
refreshing too that there is the parity that you just mentioned.
Hmm.
Just because 10 years ago, it was the same teams over and over again.
Yep.
Like, Celtics are the top team right now, but it wouldn't shock me if they lose a series. They can lose one series, and then the rest of the league, the rest of the top teams, all you can make a case for any of them second. It's if anyone can knock off the Celtics, and it's anyone's thing to win the championship. Like, I don't think we've had a repeat team in the finals since the Warriors weren't it. We haven't had a back-to-back conference champion since the Warriors, the year they lost to the Raptors, which is kind of crazy. We went on a 4-year run, 3-year run where it was just Warriors, Cavs
Now
every year. You could pencil them in.
that was just that I have nostalgia for that era. I do have nostalgia for that era because that was just such a tradition. It felt like almost like an annual
You
tradition.
could just pencil them in. Every other team, just
Mhm.
why even play almost?
Right, yeah. Mhm.
Still gonna be an interesting basketball season. I'm excited about the Paul George acquisition. Gonna see how they do. That's gonna lead me into this. I know you haven't been following it, but the Olympics, the one thing that's good for Embiid playing in these Olympics, I know he didn't play good on Sunday, but it lets him see how good players prepare. It lets him see how the best of the best prepare. It lets him see a different style of play. So it lets him see a more team play. Because when he came into the Sixers organization, it was during the process, a losing culture. And when you have a losing culture, that's bad. Like a losing culture, your players they don't know how to win when you're ready to win. That was the biggest problem with the process. When the team's ready to win, the coach didn't know how to win. Brett Brown didn't know how to win at that point because he was just told to lose, basically. And B didn't know how to win. So they come in with a losing mindset when they're ready to win. Maybe this can help kind of rid them of that losing mindset. Hopefully. But the Olympics have been fun to follow. The Gold Zone on Peacock, giving people a little bit of a taste of NFL Red Zone with Scott Hansen doing Gold Zone, watching fencing, swimming,
The
wrestling, boxing,
the variety is obviously unmatched.
the beach volleyball.
Yeah.
I actually want, before you give your thought on like the Embiid thing that I just brought up, playing in the Olympics. What do you think the easiest Olympic sport would be to play? Someone's gonna, if I have any, for what I say, people might get mad at me if there's any equestrians that watch this podcast, but any horse people. But what do you think would be the easiest Olympic sport if you're given a year of training to go win a gold medal in?
I mean, gosh.
Summer Olympic.
My answer really should be just riding the bench for Team USA basketball, and then that would be easy.
That's
for me.
a good
Ride
answer.
the bench, like you'll see me handing out water bottles. I'll get memes like Jason Tatum. I do not care. Like I will be the one to distribute the towels, everything. I can do that. I can get a gold for that. That'll be good. Real talk. I don't even. I mean, gosh, yeah. I feel like this is a crazy even way to go about it. Because I'm not. I mean, shoot. You look at me, even on this little rectangle of a camera, like I need to really get in the gym to actually be anywhere near. Yeah, I don't know. I came into that top of my head. What, like cycling? That's crazy. Cycling is crazy. To have that endurance. I mean, I do have an aerobic background running cross country. Maybe getting on the bike. And now if the bike is set a particular way, get on the gear, maybe I could. I don't know. I'm
My
spitballing
answer
here because, of course,
is
the question's a little tongue in cheek, right? So,
equestrian.
that's your answer.
The horse jumping thing. Give
But
me a
see,
year. Let me learn how
that
to
would have me nervous.
get.
The horse, my understanding is that's horseback, right?
Yeah, you're on a horse and they do jumps and all.
Okay, so can't the horse sense? Like, if I would have nervous,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I would be nervous. If
That,
the horse senses my nerves, that horse is gonna also have the performance affected. So I would actually make the horse worse.
that's why I say give me a year.
Okay, so you're saying get used to it.
A year of training.
Mhm.
What besides having like a connection with the horse potentially, and besides knowing when to get it to jump, which that's a skill part of it. But what athletic ability does that take? Besides, you got to be like a certain height, weight. I'm too big. I'd have to lose some weight. But what skill does that really take? Sorry for the equestrians out there.
Dude,
Get
when this finds its way to the equestrian community, you will probably get schooled.
give me a year. I think I'd be able to compete and hold my own if you give me the right horse.
No, it's a high bar.
Give me the best horse possible. And
Oh,
give
okay.
me a year.
Now you want to start at the highest level.
Give me the best horse possible that already knows what to do, and throw me on it. I think I could go.
This is like
potentially win a
give me
medal.
the Phillies roster and make me the manager and just have me not mess it up. Don't mess
Yeah.
it up. Just don't mess it up. Don't change anything.
Yeah,
Just
just give me
throw
the
'em out
horse
there.
that knows what to do, the best athletic horse or whatever,
Mhm.
and just let me form a connection with it for a year. Let me learn how to like teach it how to jump or when to jump. I'll do that. I think I could medal in that sport. It's the only sport I think I'd be able to hold my own in. What do you think?
There are so many too. Like, I mean, we can scratch several off the list. Like weightlifting from 8. Nope.
What do you think the
Obviously.
hardest is?
Canoe. Kayaking and canoeing. That's harder than that's harder.
They're
That like
all
people
like
make it look
6,
easy.
7 or taller. They're all like monsters.
It's wild. All of these are
I
like
think
I can't break dance. Like, isn't that in summer? Olympic summer is
yeah,
break
I think
dancing
that's
too?
in the summer now. Like I can't
I
break
can't.
dance.
You're
The
not gonna catch me doing that.
the other
I said
sport
cycling. I cannot actually pedal that
I think
quickly.
I could
Like
hold my own in. Maybe wrestling. They're
now,
all really good, but as long as I don't get pinned, that would be my goal. Just don't
their
get pinned.
techniques though are so different, like from what you would ever see too. Like just
I'm just stalling my ass off. I'm stalling my ass off, not getting pinned.
yeah. But see, that's not meddling anything. Table tennis.
I'm not meddling.
Tennis. People see table tennis on a list of the sports and say like, oh, okay, like I can handle that. No,
You're
like
getting
that
destroyed. You're not
hand-eye
even touching
the
that
ping
ball.
pong is that's just
I think the hardest sport would be water polo.
mm,
I watch
yeah.
that sport. I think I'd do better in basketball than I would in water polo. They're
Yeah,
allowed
and
to hit each other.
right.
Like you got to tread water.
Right. No,
Be
water
able to
polo
jump
has to be
somehow and throw a
exhausting.
ball.
It has to be so exhausting. Even as
Yeah.
a goalkeeper, it has to be exhausting.
That's got to be the hardest sport there is in the Olympics.
It easily could be, honestly, because think about like the endurance.
Yeah, your muscles are gonna be worn out by the end of it. I would die.
And there is collegiate water polo too. Like think about
Yeah.
like I'm still wrapping up college. So like, think about
I want to know
wow,
how you get
like,
into
hats
like,
off.
some of these sports for the Olympics. Like there's someone from Delaware, an 18-year-old, artistic swimming. How do you get into that? Like
We said dedication from the start of the show. It's a different kind of dedication, clearly, because
there's a dude from Delaware playing for like the rugby team. Where in Delaware is there a rugby like little league? How do you get into rugby?
I don't know about if we
at
can
a young
sign
age?
off on little league rugby. Like, hey, let's play flag rugby first. You know, up to a certain age. You
like,
know,
how-
like
how do you get
I
into
enjoy
that at
flag
a-
football. Let's do that for rugby too at that young age.
Like I've never heard of like a young like rugby league in this area. Like I don't
Well,
know how they get into these sports.
I'll tell you what, locate it and become a coach, and then learn how to coach, and then coach people, and then yeah, you're on your way.
Yeah, some of the sports in the Olympics are cool to watch. It's cool just to watch the sports. I actually saw something. Wouldn't it be cool to see, or it said all athletes should be forced to play like in a different sport that's not theirs in the Olympics? Like LeBron should have to go and do volleyball.
Yeah, I'm sure the Lakers owners would love that. As he's landing on the beach sand, you know, or like here he is elevating for a spike, and as he comes down, they're holding their collective breath.
Kevin Durant goes and play volleyball. Joel Embiid playing soccer. What's another one? Steph Curry doing
Could you
the
imagine the
shooting
wingspan of some
one.
of these NBA guys in the water polo? Like, I know the water polo, they got the aerobic capacity to go up and down the court. You think about just treading the water, having that wingspan, having that height to just block passes and shots.
Actually, I got the sport for LeBron. Handball.
Oh yeah. Oh well,
Watch
that would just
watch
be so
LeBron
different.
playing handball. That would be so fun. Or Kevin Durant playing handball. That would be like so fun just to watch. It'd be cool if they did some if they were forced to play in another sport for something. Watch Kevin Durant do gymnastics. He could do some gymnastics probably. Nah,
That
he's too
flexibility
tall.
is that flexibility. I don't know. It's a flexibility thing.
Yeah,
Like I'm not saying it's not flexible and very.
that would just be fun just to watch, just to
No,
see.
I don't know if
Just
it'd be fun for me because I'm sitting there saying, "Oh my gosh, here they are. Don't get hurt. Don't get hurt."
nah, I'd love to see him beat out there playing soccer. So he grew up playing soccer.
Yeah. Well,
See
yeah.
a 7-footer out
Hey,
there playing soccer.
multi-sport backgrounds. It's huge.
Yeah, it would be fun. I was gonna touch on the Mitchkov thing, but I kind of touched on that in a previous episode. I will touch on it actually. Do you have any particular thought of Mitchkov coming over for the Flyers as we?
Well, I want to let you take the floor too because we're running low on time. But
Yeah,
my primary thought would be, I'm not entrenched in hockey circles by any means, but I know his name many times, having heard it, and just the buzz and energy that's around the Flyers having a
yeah,
decent season,
excitement.
coupled with looking forward to his arrival. It's a different kind of just vibe, and there
The,
needs to be that kind of energy, especially when you look at the Flyers. They need to be independent of anything else going on in Wells Fargo because, of
yeah,
course, the Sixers are trying to move out. The Flyers need to be their own viable, rebuilding fan base brand, right?
they.
And so, what you're about to discuss, I think, is going to have a huge role to play in that.
Yeah, I'm gonna touch on it briefly too. What you kind of just said, excitement. If I have to give one word about it, excitement. It just somewhat rejuvenized the Flyers. Like I haven't really tuned in the last 3 years. I'll be honest about that. I might tune in to watch a Mitchkov game, watch Mitchkov play. He, when he was coming out, he was talked about in the same category as Bedard. A year before they came out, him and Bedard were like neck and neck. Only reason he didn't get drafted 2 in the draft was because people thought he was going to have to stay in Russia longer. And now he's only coming over after only a year. I'm excited to see what this kid can do. Want to see how he performs. It's excitement for the Flyers. Has me interested to watch hockey again. Like, has me interested to maybe go watch a hockey game again. I'll touch more on that in a second. I'm going to round up this episode. Going to go rapid fire kind of through Luke's Locks since this is a 1-year anniversary episode. Going to give a Luke's Locks. Team USA basketball is going to win the gold medal. I don't need to explain any more on that. Kind of already explained it in a previous episode. Team USA is winning the gold medal in basketball, 1,000%. No ifs, ands, or buts. And then, since we're on the 1-year anniversary, my Luke's list is going to be a refreshment on my current top 5 teams in sport, my current favorite top 5 teams in sports. For Philly sports, it changes. The Eagles will always be number 1, then the 3, then the 2 through 4 change, just depending on how they're doing. So, starting this list off, coming in at number 5 is the Ravens. Since I'll be working down in Baltimore, I'll be following them. I'll be a official sports media member in the city of Baltimore.
Woo! Let's go.
So Ravens at 5. 76ers at 4. I'm excited about them. But for the first time in a long time, I have some excitement about the Flyers, which is why they're number 3. The Mitchkov reason. Excited to watch Mitchkov. Finally have some excitement there. At number 2 is the Phillies. The Phillies, despite their struggles recently, I still believe in them. I still believe they got a shot to win it all. Honorable mention, the Orioles. Same reason as the Ravens. I'll be working down there. I'm hoping for a Phillies-Orioles World Series. That would be perfect for me down there working. And then number 1, the Eagles. Eagles, they'll always be my number 1 team. That's the list of my top 5 current teams in Philly. My top 5 favorite teams currently in sports. This was a fun episode. It was nice having you on, Dan.
Hey, man,
I
I had a lot
appreciate
of
you
fun,
coming on
and
for the 1-year anniversary.
yes, this is a great way to celebrate. I'm glad you thought of me. Amazing to be here. And also, I have to just share, I got my ping on my phone, the Phillies' new advertising jersey patch.
Oh yeah, it's Yeah, the Independence Blue Cross. Your name's kind of crossing it out. There it is.
All
It's an
right.
Independence Blue Cross.
Now,
They should
see,
have done Wawa.
light blue. Okay, at least it's not a crazy jarring
Yeah.
color, but that thing's enormous. It's a billboard on the shoulder, but I can't be surprised.
They should have done
Up to arm,
Wawa
I should
for it.
say. Yeah.
While we're on this thing of sponsors, real quick, before do the closing videos and all. What do you think the sponsor of the new Wells Fargo Center should be? The new name of the Wells Fargo Center.
Um. Hmm.
I say
I
Wawa
mean,
Arena.
you
Wawa
never really
Center.
know. Like you think about like the crypto thing. Like there was a crypto company or whatever that had its name on an arena too. I don't even know if
Yeah.
that's still the case.
Yeah, it's in
Um.
LA Crypto Arena.
I don't know if I'm not sure. I mean, your assumption would be probably some other bank
Yeah.
at the end of the day. Now, naming rights, they're getting more
Tasty Cake
expensive just like
Arena.
everything else, right? Like, and also, I think the value, whatever the folks are looking for as an asking price, if everybody knows the Sixers are angling to move out of that building, then the value. I mean, I know there'll still be like
Yeah,
other
the
events
value
there and
could
the
go down.
Flyers, ostensibly, presumably, but I mean, I'm not exactly sure what they're going to be looking for cost wise. I'm not sure who's going to be in the mix, but
Who knows? Maybe this could
it's
help
hard for
the
me to throw a
Sixers
name
stay.
out there. If you're a betting a betting man on it, I mean, yeah, I think of the usual suspects, banks, insurers, that kind of thing.
If you had to pick personally, like if you
All right.
without the price, if you had to just
Um,
pick, just a
I'm trying to think of
fun
something that
name.
has a little bit of an area tie or somewhat. I mean, it's honestly
I say
escaping
Wawa
me
or
right
Tasty
now.
Cake.
What'd you say?
I say Wawa or Tasty Cake. Tasty Cake
Tasty
Arena.
Cake does not have that kind
The
of money.
Tasty Cake
I'm
Center.
sorry. Tasty Cake. Now call it the cake. Like when you get there, like just a nickname, the cake. Amazing. But
The Wawa Center. People not
Oh,
from the area would be like, what the hell is the Wawa?
yeah, I feel like Wawa would want to say like Wawa Arena, like have it end in
Yeah.
end in all those ah sounds. I don't even know.
That would be my choice. Wawa.
Well,
The
Wawa's
Wawa
spending all
Center.
their money apparently opening up these locations here in Delaware because there have been
Yeah.
so many that are planned and already are here. So I think Wawa should stick
So-
to the 302
So
in my selfish way.
if you had to choose one, ultimately, gun to your
It's
head.
not if I had to choose, I would choose because I'm trying to predict it correctly. I don't know. I would just choose. I can't think of a bank that's headquartered in the same way that like Citizens already has a presence with the Phils. So
Call it 76ers Place as a way to get them to stay.
just say, hey, we're gonna keep a clean slate for the Sixers just so they can.
We'll call it
have the
76ers
deal
Place, so it's your arena now, not the Flyers.
And you can't rule out some a big national player like an Amazon
Or just
throw their weight around.
the reason that building's there. Just call it the Snyder Building or the Snyder Center for Ed Snyder.
Have like a name, have like an actual like legacy name on it.
Yeah, for Ed Snyder.
Yeah,
the Snyder Center.
That would be nice. See, but
yeah,
we know.
Ed Snyder's the reason that building's there.
Yeah, the reason we're talking about naming rights is the idea of the jersey patch.
Yeah,
the Phillies just
the money talks.
Yeah, which I enjoy following the business of sports too. Like I'm not here to hate on it. Like I get why the Phillies have that patch.
Yeah,
but it's a little bit in your face. Now again, that's what they're paying for, right? Like IBX is paying for that.
Yeah,
but I love the business of sports just the same way and following it, but it's about being like the Phillies are a different kind of organization than like some random lack of history of success franchise. Like the Phillies have a certain,
it's gonna look weird on a
pinstripes
jersey.
mean something. So you just slap a huge IBX on it. I know that Independence Blue Cross has been in the Philly market for a long time, but it's still a little in your face. Don't love it for the fans or for the or just for the dignity of the uniform, honestly. But I can't say it's out of nowhere or is it rational.
Yeah. That'll just about wrap up our episode. We want to thank people for tuning in over the last year. This is not the end of the podcast. Not doing 1 year and then dipping.
By no means.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode. Nice having you on again, Dan. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe on all of our platforms. It is greatly appreciated. Tune in next week for episode 54. As we round out this episode, I'm going to send you guys off with 2 videos. They're going to be about 1:30 in length from WrestleMania. That's what I did for the intro video. An event that I went to over the last year, sporting event type thing that I went to over the last year that was one of my favorite memories over the last year. So here's a reaction video, 2 reaction videos. You can hear my freak out at the end. Sorry for the language, YouTube. Thank you guys for tuning in.